Good evening, Mr. Ranjith. It's such a pleasure to have you. We've heard so much about you, and it's so nice to feature you in our spotlight section. Moving on, Mr. Ranjith, will it be possible for you to share how you got into the field and tell us your story from a boy working at Murph and interested in hearing aids to how you built your own niche for yourself, to being the MD and the principal and having all these accomplishments and working with neurosurgeons. We have a long tale to tell. So, where did it all start and how did you get interested in our field?
Very good morning, Greeti, and thank you so much for this opportunity. And I would like to thank the ASHA, the Asian Caucus team, for giving this opportunity. And Reeti, to be very specific to your question, and my first passion was to be a designer. So, I mean, yeah, passion means only one. So I wanted to be a designer. I don't want to get into speech and hearing. Though I know that what speech and hearing is, even at the age of 18, because my uncle, Mr. Manoharan, who is my maternal uncle, was a speech pathologist and audiologist. So I know what the profession is, but still that was not my passion, nor I had the focus to get into that field. So I want to get into designing. I got into an institute called the Central Leather Research Institute, which is situated in the capital of the state of Tamil Nadu, which is in the south of India. I gave my entrance exam. I was the only candidate who was appearing for the entrance after my A level, which is a 12th grade. And I cracked the exam. And during the interview, that was my first interview that I'm attending at the age of 17. And they gave me two options. Either I can do a 4-year degree program in designing and the leather technology, or I can do a 2-year diploma in leather technology and designing. So in my mind, I mean, diploma was little substandard. That's my thought. So I don't want to get into diploma. I wanted a degree, but they said I am waitlisted one if I have to take that degree program. I accepted it, and fortunately or unfortunately, I would say fortunately, I didn't get that seat over there. So I didn't have the opportunity to become a designer. So my dad asked me, what do you want to do again? I said, I will again write this entrance exam next year. I will again like to go into designing. Then he said, that's perfectly fine. What are you going to do for the next 1 year? And my dad was very particular that I'm not going to sit at home. I have to get out of the house, get into some other program. If I still have an interest into passion into designing even after 1 year, he said, you can go ahead. But by the time I didn't have any clue what to get into, then I wanted to, I pursued Bachelor of Science in Physics. So I just got a seat in one of the reputed colleges in another city in south of India. But somehow my heart doesn't, accept it. I mean, my heart doesn't lie there. So I just attended the college just for 1 day. And then the next day I said, I went to the principal's room and I said, I'm quitting this program because it's not like I don't like the program. Somehow I don't feel comfortable over here. So then I went into BTech in computer science. I did this BTech computer science for a couple of months or so, but still my heart doesn't lie there. So after a couple of 3-4 months later, the Ramchandra University called for this program in audiology and speech language pathology in 95. And my uncle asked, would I be interested to get into it? I said, anyway, I'm not interested in what I'm doing now. Let me just give it a try for this course as well. So I got into this program. Then everything went on. And when I went to the university for the first time to get the application form for this course, this Ramchandra at that point of time had a very beautiful fountain at the entrance. I just fell in love with the fountain. So I thought if I have to spend 1 year before I get into designing, let me spend in front of this fountain. Why I would just go and spend somewhere where I don't like things. So that's why I got into speech and hearing. And what happened, slowly the program, I got gripped into the program. And one of the reasons why I liked this program a lot was Dr. Mohan Kameshwaran. So Dr. Mohan Kameshwaran was a very famous ENT surgeon. And he was working in Royal College in London. Then he was setting up a university in Saudi Arabia. He moved to India in 1995, and I was in the university in 1995. In 1996, he started this Madras Inter Research Foundation. And then he called me one day and he told that he's starting a new hospital and he wanted me to be his audiologist. And I said, I haven't finished my first year of my undergrad. I'm just going to finish my first year of my undergrad. And he told me that he had so much of confidence on me. I know you, I've seen you, so that doesn't matter. You go to your university in the morning and just come and help me in the evening to do some audiograms and tympanometries for me. And he didn't ask me, are you willing? He said, you are joining. Okay, my room was ready, my equipments are all ready before I could even accept what he is offering to me. So that's how it started. So morning I go to the university, evening I'll come and work with him. It was so interesting working with him, and it was so interesting working in Ramchandra as well, studying in Ramchandra as well, because we were the first batch of audiology students, and we didn't have any resources. In fact, the professors joined much 2 or 3 months later than the students were admitted for the course. Our first tutor in audiology was an ENT surgeon. So the first case we observed, everything what we have seen is through medical eyes, through the ENT eyes. The audiology, what we read for the first 2 months was through the ENT eyes, otologist eyes. And then when I started working with Dr. Mohan in the evening, I learned a lot of things. So he is one such wonderful person who really understands what audiology is. He knows when I make mistakes in my audiograms, and he's kind enough to call and correct it. And that was a great learning for me, working with a surgeon who's accomplished, who's a great scientist by himself, and learning from him and being mentored by him is one of the biggest blessing for me. And apart from that, I also had Mr. Manoharan, who is my maternal uncle, and I used to attend his clinic as well in the evening and Sundays. And Sundays I go to some special schools. I give some therapy for these children. So both my uncle and Dr. Mohan has always taught me not to waste time, use time very productively. And this is the time that I have to learn. So over a period of time, I really like this profession. And one of the reasons why I like this profession is simply because you have every option to do whatever you want. So that was something very nice. And basically, I'm a kind of a person. And later when I realized, and what made me to stick to this profession, I was so passionate into designing, and what made me to stick into the profession. So if I have to think about it, the one thing that made me to stick to this profession was, even in designing, basically I wanted to do different things. So designing is all about different radical thoughts and different dimensions of thinking. And this profession gave that to me. You can be a very radical thinker. You can have different dimensions of thoughts. You can implement new ideas into it. You can execute it, and you can see the results of it. So I think that's one of the reasons why I got gripped into the profession. So basically, designing was not my real passions. To be different was my passion, I think. So I always wanted to be different. So and this gave me a platform. So when I worked with Dr. Mohan, it gave me a fantastic platform to throw my ideas to him. He's very kind enough to listen to my ideas. If he liked it, he did everything to make it possible. So if I want an equipment A or B or C or D, he's willing to buy it for me. If I have to do a new procedure, he's willing to let me do it. So this is something very, very interesting for me. So, and this is why I got into this field. And no regrets. I mean, this is one profession which I love the most. And I think it's the greatest blessing that I didn't get into this designing program. And I would like, if I have to thank somebody for getting into the profession, I would like to thank all the guys who are sitting and taking my interviews in the designing institute, who did not offer me the seat over there.
Thank you so much. That was such a fantastic story and tale to hear. So I would also like to ask about how you got, so getting into the field is one thing, but you're also so good at what you do, and it's hard to be a great clinician and also excel in academia. You're one of the best in India when it comes to clinical services in audiology. You think so out of the box, you've excelled so much, but you've also equally excelled in academia. How did that happen? And can you give us a little glimpse into, and I also know that you worked for a while, you came back for your master's, you finished your graduate program, and then but life didn't stop. You kept going on with your clinical services, you kept working, you pursued your education, and then went on and excelled even further. And can you give us a little glimpse into that section of your career?
Sure. Um, Now, I never knew that I'm going to be a teacher in my life. Okay. But if I look back, what made me to be a teacher in my life, when I was a kid, and my father was in a very good profile job, and my mother was a housemaker. So I'm the only child in the family. So, but evening when I come back home, my father used to teach mathematics and physics to his employees' children, who can't afford to go and learn with extra tuitions and extra classes after thing. My mother used to teach language to my maid's children. So when I sit in my study room, I always had other people sitting and studying along with me. So I used to see how my father teaches mathematics and physics, how my mother teaches language to them. Now, at times to take a break, I used to take over my mother's role, and I used to teach some of the language to our maids' kids. So I think I picked up the teaching from there. I think if I have to look back, that could be one of the reasons why I liked teaching. It was inbuilt, but I never thought I'm a good teacher. I never thought I can express my things in a very simple format. So maybe that's where the teaching things came into it. Another thing was I was so passionate in what I'm doing that I wanted to share it with people. So when you want to share what you're doing to people, you have to be very good in expressing things. I think the combination of these two things, I think, made me to express my intentions and thought much clearer to the people. And that's exactly what is teaching you, the way you express what you wanted to tell in a very clear format to make them understand. And the second thing, when it comes to how I got a grip into this profession, not only the profession, how I got in depth of it, doing things differently, was when I was doing my second year of my graduation, we did the first cochlear implant. So it was in 12th of March, 1997. So Dr. Mohan did the first cochlear implant in this part of the world. And cochlear implant was something very new, and it was a radically new treatment in those times. And I was part of the team. And looking back, I was just the first year student at the time, or just second year student, finishing my second year of undergrad and moving to the third year, something like the transition. So I knew what cochlear implant was at the time. So after I finished my graduation, which was in 1998, I had two choices. Either I can continue working or I can do my master's. But I didn't choose to do master's because, honestly telling, I didn't like the curriculum of the master's at the point of time, because nothing interesting in the curriculum. So I thought there's no point in wasting 2 years of time reading something which doesn't interest you. Rather than, I was so passionate about what the kind of work I'm doing in MRF already. So I was an audiologist, I was a speech pathologist, another area of interest was voice therapy, and I can do everything, whatever I want over there. Then Dr. Mohan asked me, what are you going to do now? I said, I'll continue my clinical work. I don't want to go to master's. Then what happened? Then we started doing few more cochlear implants, So we had around 5 or 6 cochlear implant children's at that point of time. So I used to give therapy as well for that. So I had a chip on my shoulder. I was so head-weighted at the time. Like, I'm the only cochlear implant audiologist there, and the youngest cochlear implant audiologist over there. Every time you go to the conference, you have a different look. Everybody look up to you, and every presentation you make is cochlear implant, and nobody has heard about what cochlear implant is. So I was so head-weighted that I'm one of the best. Until I had a moment in my life where I was giving therapy to couple of children. So one of the child was a hearing aid user, and followed by that kid, the next patient would be a cochlear implant user. So this is my schedules in the evening. So one day, a child with a cochlear implant came in for the therapy. The therapy was done, so he was sent out. And the next child came into the room for the therapy, and he was a hearing aid user. So while I was talking to his mother, the child asked his mother that he wanted a device like the other child. That means he wanted a cochlear implant. The mother told him, like, this is not for people like us. So that changed my moment. So that day I went, I cried like anything. I said, this is something really bad. What I've achieved now is not because of my own efforts, it's because somebody has money to pay for that. So that moment I realized, like, no, this is not correct. So that moment I removed all my chip on my shoulders. So that day I decided, like, we have to work in such a way that this cochlear implant the technology can reach even to the commonest man. So Dr. Mohan always quotes this, and I like this quote a lot, and I would like to quote it everywhere. Now, for example, if my son goes to a school by bicycle, and Reeti, if your son goes to a school by a Mercedes Benz, it's acceptable. But if my son has to remain deaf just because I don't have money, and your son has to have hearing just because you have the money, it's unacceptable in the society. So this thing really hit me very hard. So that moment I realized that, henceforth, whatever I do, I have to do it in such a way that even the common man could afford it, or we have to make it affordable to the commonest man. So that's the goal I've taken it in life. And Dr. Mohan also had a very similar passion. He wants to make things very, very affordable, or make it affordable for the commonest person. So this synced very well to both of us. And that really made me to work, in a different direction of looking into the field. It's not like science, and the science without humanity, without humanity is a sin. So it's a very famous saying from Mahatma Gandhi, but I really liked it. So we have to make sure the science reaches humanity. So that's one of the important things for me. Then we did cochlear implants, and Dr. Mohan told me, like, now it's right time for you to go to Melbourne. I'll send you to Melbourne to work with Professor Graham Clark at Bionic Ear Institute. So I went to Melbourne. And he told me, once you come back from your training, your plate is going to be full of cochlear implants. I didn't believe it at the time, because I thought, okay, we only do 2 or 3 implants in a year, and how am I going to be working only on cochlear implants? But believe me, he's a great visionary, and what he's said 5 years ago is true today. So I don't have any time to look at any other patients apart from implantees today. We have so much of implantees now. So I went to Melbourne, got my training, came back. That changed the entire view how I have to look at the implantees. Then in 2003, we had a very important challenge to face, because till we did cochlear implant, neither the ENT surgeon nor the audiologist looked at the anatomy of the ear and the nerve. We always relied on your audiological diagnosis. And we all know that a patient with cochlear aplasia and a patient with a normal patented anatomy but a profound hearing loss, all the audiological investigation is going to be the same. So which means what I might have fitted, or many of us must have fitted, a hearing aid for a child who does not have a cochlear or auditory nerve. So how cruel it could be. So the moment we started doing implants, then we started looking at the CD scans. Then we found there's a lot of anomalies. Absent cochleas, Michel's aplasia, absent cochlear nerve, hypoplastic nerve, where cochlear implant is contraindicated. So what are we going to do for these kids? So next option was a brainstem implant. Right. So now, one similar qualities for me and Dr. Mohan, we get bored with toys so faster. So we always wanted to change toys. We always want to do something different, and something different in the benefit of the patient. So then we had a very young girl who was 13 years old, who was diagnosed with neurofibromatous type 2, which is a tumor in the auditory nerve or the nervous system. And then the tumor on the right ear was removed, and she lost her hearing as a consequence. The 8th nerve has to be, dissected. And she also had developed a tumor on the left side. And if we remove the tumor, she's going to lose hearing on that side as well. A very young, bright girl, and very good scholastic performer, very poor family. So we decided, let's do a brainstem implant for this girl. So to do a brainstem implant, one of the important condition was that the audiologist should have enough experience with an electrical ABRs, EABRs. But nobody has heard about electrical ABRs except, you've read some articles about it. So I have to do an electric ABR. So nobody is selling electric ABR in the country. So I have to contact a company and a dealer in India. He said he contacted his manufacturer. His manufacturer said, yes, it's possible with this equipment. And we bought the equipment. The equipment was shipped to us. And the dealer said, no, I don't know how to install it because I'm just a dealer and it's a new device. I'm sorry, sir. You have to figure it yourself. So we tried, troubleshooted, and we did the first tele troubleshooting and teleaudiology in the year 2004, where the team in US was helping me to install and troubleshoot the device using a team viewer. And I had my cochlear implant patient by side at night because if I have to match the US time, we have to start working at night. So overnight, I worked with this kid, and the next day morning, I could record EABRs. So that was a great moment in our life. So when I went and told Dr. Mohan, yes, I could record EABR, Dr. Mohan said, fine, let's start ordering the ABIs now. So we ordered the ABI, and we had several problems. And, the money was a problem. So Dr. Mohan spent money from his pocket to get an implant. And for me to get some training, and some part of the device were funded by someone from our side. So everything worked well. Everything was ready at the moment, and the device was supposed to come to us. But unfortunately, the 2 days before the surgery, the customs in Delhi did not release the equipment to us because saying this is a new equipment which is not listed in the customs. So it's very difficult for them to release it. So day after tomorrow is a surgery, and what are we going to do? So Dr. Mohan immediately made a call to the central minister at that time, and then he explained the problem. He said, this is one of the kind in India we wanted to. The minister was very kind enough. He was the IT minister then, Mr. Dayanidhi Maran. And he was kind enough, he used his influence and he got this implant delivered to us. He explained and got things for us. The implant is ready. We did the first case and everything went on well. It was very successful. I will never forget my first switch on, which took 12 hours. It was very interesting because no experience. You have to go by books and things. So when I stimulated a particular electrode in the brainstem, this girl said she has a funny sensation in her oral cavity. Another electrode elicited a bitter taste. Another electrode was tickling in her tummy. It was totally different. So because you are stimulating at the brainstem level, very close to the cochlear nucleus, every 2 or 3 millimeters nearby, you have other neurons, other motor functions, everything is there. It's a quite interesting experience. So we learned step by step. And then this girl did extremely well. She finished her 12th grade. She finished her graduation. She finished her post-graduation. She got into a job. She was doing extremely well with ABI. So that was a great success that we did it on 15th of December 2004. And another bigger problem what we had was children, pediatric ABI. So we started our pediatric ABI for the first time in 2009. So when we approached a company who, we want to do a pediatric ABI, and they said, no, they will not give an implant for the children because it was not approved from their side to do it on a children or something. And the results were not great. But both of us had some gut feeling, fine, if it is, results are not good from their end, then what's wrong in trying it out? So another company was kind enough to give the implant to us, and we started using their device. And we did the first implant in 2009, brainstem implant in 2009. And the child was doing extremely well today. So he's now in his 10th grade or 11th grade. He's a badminton player. He's doing extremely well with the device. And that's how the journey started into brainstem implant from cochlear implant. But the most important thing is the lessons that you learn from your patients. So that's the most important thing for me. So one of the lessons what I learned was when we did cochlear implant, the indications for cochlear implant is for children less than 5 years or 6 years, But we had a patient who was 12 years old, prelingual. And this boy wanted to get a cochlear implant. But the company is clearly said the implants cannot be given for children above the age of 6 or 7, something like that. For the simple reason that the child is not going to develop language and speech with an implant because his deprivation is too long to develop language and speech. So while I was counseling this patient, a very important lesson that I learned while I was talking to this boy asked me a very, very striking question. Just because I cannot speak, who are you people to decide I shouldn't hear? Right. Very that was a great eye-opener. So then me and Dr. Mohan put his foot down, hell with the company we are doing. So he was the first prelingual child whom we implanted at the time. He's doing extremely well today. He's finished his master's in computer engineering. He is in a very top position in Indian telecommunications. And he's married. He's got a son. He's doing extremely well today. They're absolutely fine. So this is one of the important lessons. Now, just because, so this lesson is, just because somebody's program has failed, why would the other children be denied of hearing? Explaining the facts, explaining the expectations to them, laying down the probable risk and the benefits to them. If the patient is still accepting to go ahead with it, I think we should give it a try. So luck always favors the bold. So I think somewhere we have to take a bold step to go into it. So that's one of the important message. Another interesting message for us was, we had a child who's was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, Usher's syndrome, with a profound hearing loss. The child was 1 year old. And this child, our practice was, the first thing before we do an implant, we will use a hearing aid. We will try with a hearing aid on this children. The child has to wear, if the child accepts the hearing aid, we know the child will accept the implant. That was our thought. And later we realized that's a very stupid thought. This child never accepted the hearing aid. The moment you make her wear the hearing aid, it will throw the device out. And this is what most of the children do. And we told, okay, let's wait for another 6 months or so. She's just 1 year old. And then we will do an implant later once she accepts the hearing aid. That's our protocol. But the ophthalmologist warned us, she's losing her vision. If you want to do something, you do it as quick as possible. So we explained to the parent, no, we can go ahead with an implant, but if she's not accepting it, then we'll have to give it a time and you should be able to, accept that as well. They said, no problem, sir. Please go ahead. You know what? We did an implant. I was doing the switch on. I told a couple of my people to stand on either of the corners in case if she throws, please catch it, otherwise the device would get damaged. The moment she started hearing with an implant, she never took it out. A very important message. Even a 1 year old child can make a difference between a useless and a useful mission. The hearing aid was useless. She rejected it. This device was useful. She accepted it. So that changed our, again, an indication. Okay, let's not waste time on putting a hearing aid when it's a straightforward indication for CI where it's bilateral profound hearing loss. So a lot of lessons that we have learned, which also helped us to move on with decision making, is also from our patients. Apart from all the scientific evidences you have, this is also very important things that helped us to move on into it. So, and then what I used to do is, after I finished my graduation, immediately in 1998, what I used to do, every Sunday, I used to run class for the audiologists from the university. So I used to invite them to Murph, and Dr. Mohan is a great academician. So he always encouraged me to teach students. So I started my teaching much before we started our institute. And I used to take classes for ENTs on audiology. So that's how my academic career in audiology developed, grew up. And when it comes to another radical thing was, I started working with a lot of engineering students. My first project was an engineering project. So I had two of young engineers, graduates from a university in Chennai. So they came up with a concept of, they want to do something different in cochlear implant. So in 99 or so, we came up with a concept of piezoelectric cochlear implant. So we developed not a prototype, a MATLAB version of it. And these two guys went and presented an IEEE in Chicago, and they even won an award for it, 1999 or so. So my interest into research parallelly grew from day one. So because we always wanted to do something different on it. So this is how I got gripped into more into clinical work. And these are some of the incidences that changed my life. The way I look at things differently, the way what my focus has to be. And this is how my academic interest also grew over years.
Such rich stories and so many lessons to learn. No, I knew when I was going to do this interview, it's going to be like an ocean. I can only grab as much as my hand can hold. So I'm trying to kind of get the best out of the time frame that we have. Can you tell us some of your memorable, it can be memorable incidents that happened, or it can be what you think is your biggest accomplishment? Both. I need like two answers. One, in the world of clinical audiology, and one in the world of academia.
Well, a lot of things, but I can tell one interesting thing to you, which is quite recently what happened. You know, we get a lot of patients with the hypoplastic nerve. The nerve is very thin. And we also have some patients where the auditory nerve is absent. Now, every time when I look at this radiology report in the past, I'm talking about some 7 years ago, when the nerve was absent, we straight away counsel them for a brainstem implant. And one important incident was this patient was diagnosed with absent nerve aplasia, and I was counseling the patient for an ABI. While talking to him, something in my room fell off from my table and it made a loud noise. The child responded for that loud noise. I was quite surprised. When there is no auditory now, how could this child respond for it? So then I went back to Dr. Mohan. I said, look, we need to reinvestigate this child. I'm not very happy with this radiological report. So we reinvestigated, and we are looking at what are the other best investigations that we can do to confirm the presence of the auditory nerve. So at that time, I had this cortical potentials. So we did an aided cortical potentials with a maximum full-on gain just to check. To my surprise, I got a peak. So how can I get a N1 P1 when there is no auditory nerve? Then we went back and redid the radiological investigations. We found this auditory nerve taking a different route, not in the CP angle, not through the internal acoustic meatus. So this is a very big lesson, you know, never believe the textbook alone. Believe on your instincts. Look at the patients. You know, that gives a lot of information to you. Just talk to them, just observe them. You get so much of information, which really changes the way how you diagnose and look at these patients. So from then on, I started, not to believe in radiology completely. So every time when there is a hypoplastic nerve, we changed our protocol. So nowadays what we do a aided cortical potentials, and also we do a electric premonitory stimulation to check if the auditory nerve is conducting. So what happened, some of these patients where we did a transtympanic EABR, was a premonitory stimulation electric ABRs, and all these equipments are not available commercially. Some of the equipments has to be made by us in our lab. So I sit with my engineering students in the university. So we develop certain things. I sit with some of the engineers in the manufacturing companies and change equipment. So we have customized the equipments. Most of the equipments what we have for these kind of workup is all customized for us. So we didn't transtympanic ABR, we got some responses. When you give a premonitory stimulation, electric stimulation, a thin nerve, your ABR response is not a textbook version. You can get any kind of response, and extracting a response, and identifying the right auditory response is quite a task. And the biggest thing is there was an element of responsibility sitting on your shoulders that you are the decision maker there. Nobody else. If you decide this child needs a cochlear implant, this child needs, and the child is going to go for an implant. If the child needs a brainstem implant, the child is going for a brainstem implant. That's a very important decision making, because the cost of a cochlear implant would cost you in US dollars, let's say around 15,000 US dollars to 20,000 US dollars. Or a brainstem implant would cost you around some 40,000 US dollars or so. That's a huge difference in terms of price, and the outcomes are variable from cochlear implant to brainstem implant. The complications are different. It's a very big decision which is sitting on the shoulder of an audiologist. So two things. It's so fascinating. The field of audiology has gone to a level where they become the decision maker. And number two is, you know, the decision what you make at that point of time has to be supported by some evidences. And you don't have enough evidences in the literature to support it, right? So one of the most happiest moment for me was when I did transtympanic EABR for a group of subjects and whom I decided, yes, these children have some nerve conduction, let's do a cochlear implant. And after we did a cochlear implant on them, and if these children did really well, and I can still record an EABR on them with a good patented morphology. So that was a very important moment in my life. I thought, okay, so the decision what we made is correct. So now we have an evidence. We have created an evidence for that. So that gives you an uncomparable joy that, you know, yes, I have something to make decision, and I can completely dependent on that. And this is changing life of children. And this decision is changing life of children and the family together. So that was one important moment. Another important moment was when we do a brainstem implant, and when this neurosurgeon, I mean, with the due respects to all my neurosurgeons, fantabulous surgeon, we have got an extremely fine neurosurgeon with us. And the moment he opens the brainstem and he wants to put an electrode inside, the biggest challenge is positioning the electrode on the cochlear nucleus, because when you go through the lateral recess, the cochlear nucleus is underneath, and it's very difficult for the surgeon to view it, and you can't lift the lateral recess because it will cause more damage. So it is like shooting in the blind, you know, a dark room. So when the electrode is inside, it's then the audiologist, we take over, and it's our responsibility to decide whether the electrode is in position, or we have to tell the surgeon to reposition. If he has to reposition, you should also tell him, you know, whether he has to go more laterally or medially or inferiorly, superiorly, whatever it is. So again, you become a very important decision maker over there. And you are the one who is also going to take the shot. If you want to abandon the surgery, you have to say, okay, no responses, let's abandon the case. Let's not do a, go ahead. So the absolute decision is sitting on your head. So which means you have the 100% liability there. If you make a wrong decision, you're the only person responsible for that. So that huge responsibility sitting on your shoulders, and watching this, you know, peaks intraoperatively. And, you know, you can get any sorts of responses in when you stimulate the cochlear nucleus directly electrically. And you will have to be extremely careful in measuring and reconfirming the morphology and changing the parameters to reconfirm it's a true cochlear nucleus electrophysiological response. It's very interesting to do it. So the moment the profession has reached to a stage where, you know, the audiology is becoming an invasive procedure, and the audiologist has a major role to make a decision. It's something very, very, gives a great happiness to you that the profession has reached to that level. And the even more greater joy is Dr. Mohan Kameshwaran, our neurosurgeon, Dr. Vasudevan, are extremely cooperative. They give you the equal respect to make the decision. So if you say, no, let's abandon, they will abandon. If they say, okay, you have to reposition it, they will reposition it. They give that equal respect for that. So the profession has moved to a level where, you know, we have to start taking up responsibilities. The days are gone where we just do audiograms, fit hearing aids. And there were days where you fit hearing aid without knowing whether there's a cochlea or not. The nerve is still present or absent. So now the field is going in much more precise work, where you can even do differential diagnosis, and you can correlate with your audiological diagnosis with the size of the auditory nerve. And that's where it's reaching. So that's something which is exciting for me even today. And the consequences of that, what you see as a result from these patients, gives you even more confidence to go in this direction.
Thank you so much. So I had like an off-stem question based on your response. Some of us, or many of us, all across the world, budding audiologists, might be interested in CI, hearing aids, or ABI. What's your advice to budding audiologists who are interested in CI, ABI, especially when it comes to a little more, instances where you're there intraoperative? What kind of training do you think we need to equip ourselves with, or any resources, anything that you can share along those lines for the budding audiologist out there?
Well, the first thing is be passionate in what you're doing. Dedicate yourself. Never look at your watch. You should have an attitude, which I learned from Dr. Mohan, because we used to do audiograms at 2 a.m. in the morning. He has got a very busy clinic. When the patient is waiting to see you at 2 o'clock in the morning, what is your problem to see them? That should be the attitude of a professional, especially in the field where you're going to deal with humans and life, right? And the second important thing is you need to have a mentor. Choose a good mentor for you. So I had Dr. Mohan, I had Mr. Manohar, I had many other mentors with me. One of the biggest mentor for me for my lifetime is Dr. Mohan. I had a great mentor. So choose your mentor. It's very important that you all have a good mentor. The third thing is never start chasing the money for the first 5 years of your life after graduation. Because when you start chasing the money will start running away from you. You just start chasing the knowledge. Learn, because the learning does not happen inside the classroom. The learning always happens outside the classroom. What you get from the university is a basic awareness about what the profession or the basic skills. But if you really wanted to equip yourself, you have to learn for the next 5 years. And spend 25% of your income for learning every year. And that's very important. And another important thing is you should understand that your priority in your life are patients. And who is going to rate you are your patients. You may be the gold medalist. It doesn't matter. If a patient doesn't like you, if a patient doesn't like the way you treat them, the gold medalist is just rubbish. So at the end of the day, the person who's going to rate you, the person who's going to award you are the patients. So you should be very compassionate. You should gain confidence from them. And that's the basic possible with your basic attitude of looking at patients. Your work culture has to be different. Because in MRF, we have so many cochlear implantists. We work 24/7. Even Sundays we work. Even the students, postgraduate students in MRF work on Sundays. That's one of the prerequisites to join MRF. Because Sunday evening, a patient might call you, a cochlear implantee might call you and said, my son's device is not functioning and tomorrow morning he has got an exam to attend. And you can't say today is a Sunday, I'm going out with my family. It's impossible. We do have emergencies. So this is a very important attitude they have to develop. Right? These are the basic things. Whatever you learn scientifically, that's fine. You can always learn. But unless you have these basic qualities and characters, you can never become a good clinician, first of all. If you're just looking at techniques and technology, you can be a technician. But we are dealing with humans. You need to be a clinician, different from the technicians. These are the fundamental. And then, if you want to do a cochlear implant or a brainstem implant, everything becomes easy if you have this attitude to go about. Learning is when you're interested, when you're passionate about it, the learning is completely enjoyable. When you're not passionate about anything, nothing is enjoyable. So develop a passion, develop an interest, and ask a very important question to yourself, the purpose of your existence. I never thought about it. until Dr. Mohan. I keep quoting Dr. Mohan quite often because he's been my mentor throughout, from the age of 18 till now, and forever he'll be my mentor. So he always tells the purpose of existence. I never thought about it. Sitting now and thinking back, what is the purpose of my existence? Is the purpose of my existence is to make sure whoever is born deaf will never remain deaf. So that's it. If I have to do everything to achieve that, my purpose is solved. Okay. That could be in different dimensions. That could be in terms of research. That could be in terms of clinical service. That could be in terms of academic, developing more professionals. And it could be in terms of charity, in terms of developing the society, developing a system in the society, whatever it could be. So it's multidimensional if you have to achieve it, and that's exactly what we are trying to do. So have a goal, and realize what you wanted to do, and work towards it. And remember one thing: you can never cure all problems, but if you are so responsible, start taking up responsibility. If you're so responsible, you can alleviate all the problems from the patients. That's very important. You need to understand. And every situation is a challenging situation. Every patient is different. And never, ever think that you can't do. Be bold, go ahead and do it. But do it ethically, learn properly. Don't jump and do procedures for getting name and fame, because it's not going to be there. If you're just working for name and fame, it will fade away. Because a lot of people today wanted to get into cochlear implant program or a brainstem implant program to call themselves as a cochlear implant or a brainstem implant professional as a status symbol. It doesn't work. It doesn't hold good. When you really start working towards the benefit of the patient, you will go higher and higher, and more higher and higher you go, you have to be more humble and humble.
Very well said. And coming from an expert, amazing. Hats off to that. Can you tell us about, you have such rich connections, interdisciplinary wise. You work with neurosurgeons. You mentioned that you worked with ophthalmologists. You work with, like, when kids are in schools, or with educators. So can you give us a little glimpse into the interdisciplinary kind of work that you do and have done in your career, please?
Yeah. Now, from day one, we had a protocol that where we involve a lot of professionals, because we know the team is more important. And Dr. Mohan has developed a very good team, and he has taught me how to work with the team. So that brought me in connection with many great professionals. So like a neurosurgeon, otologist, radiologist, connections with teachers, auditory rehabilitationists, and a lot more people we are connected with. Now, everybody has got something to contribute, which you have to learn from them. You have to go to their level and learn from them. And you have to develop excellent rapport and make sure there is a mutual respect among the team. And that's very, very important, because for a simple example, now let's take a patient with hypoplastic nerve. So I should have a good rapport to go and tell my radiologist, look, my results are a little different from what it is. Why don't you, do a different cut? Why don't you make it, different angle, and make sure that you can see some of the nerve fibers or the nerves or whatever it is. So that's very important. That kind of discussion is very important. And then with the neurosurgeon, it's very important how we interact during the surgery in the brainstem implant program, and especially with the ENT doctor. The kind of interaction that we have in the intraoperatively or decision making for a cochlear implant. I mean, that's very, very interesting, because they give their perspective in a different way than what you could think of. And if you can understand that, that gives you so much of information for you to make a very good diagnosis and a decision for this particular patient. And likewise, to mention here with respect to the teachers of the deaf, we had teachers of the deaf. but we never had a teachers for the hearing. Because after you do a cochlear implant, this child is not a deaf child, it's a hearing child. So you can't use the same principles as what the teachers of the deaf is using. And in 97, 98, 99, 2000, the concept of auditory rehabilitation, auditory therapy never existed in the country. It was just, we're just learning about it. So in 2000, so we decided that we will create a profession of auditory rehabilitation. So the MERV started the first program of auditory rehabilitationists, where a training program was set, a one-year training program for the teachers to teach children with hearing, not with hearing loss. So we created a profession, and today this profession has been recognized by the council, and any institution can run this program. And this is one of the important reasons why we even started this cochlear implant program, is to make these children to get integrated into the society. The last person who is going to work, and the person who is going to work with most of the time with the children to integrate them into the society, are this auditory rehabilitationist or the auditory verbal therapist. But we don't have the profession. So we wanted to create a profession. So we started the first course, a formal training program in the country. And now we wanted to expand that program in a bigger way. So, which means we need more and more auditory rehabilitationists. And these auditory rehabilitationists, when they undergo training in our place, they undergo training in otology, they undergo training in audiology, speech language pathology, and also habilitation. Likewise, we also have a program for otologists. We have a program called the Postgraduate Diploma in Implantation Otology for the surgeons, if they have to get their extra certification in implantation otology. So the first thing what Dr. Mohan does when the students come, the ENT surgeons come, he posts them into the audiology clinic. They said, you first go and learn audiology if you want to be a better otologist. So it was much easier for me because I have a very, very understanding surgeon. I have a very understanding team. Another interesting group of professionals are anesthesiologists. And audiologists and anesthesiologists has a very strong connection, because every time you do an intraoperative measure, and if you're going to look at the muscle potentials, muscle responses, if the anesthesiologist has induced a muscle relaxant to the patient, you will not be able to get a response. And you would think that there is no nerve response, there's no response. So you need to understand a little bit of anesthesia. You need to understand when to tell the anesthesiologist to reverse the muscle relaxant, what duration it has to be. So it's audiology is a science of hearing, but the hearing is not only hearing. Hearing is connected to many other components to it, right? So my job is not to make someone hear. My job is to make someone hear, listen, learn, speak, and socialize and communicate. So that's totally different. It involves many professionals into the game. So this gives us a very good exposure, experience, and because of the very good team, we all learned, interdisciplinary subjects much easier and with ease. And they're much open to discuss with you. We had a patient with a very specific syndrome called the Javel-Lange-Nielsen syndrome, right? It's quite common in south of India, where they have a very prolonged QT interval. So, which means like for some of the electrical stimulation, they may even go into cardiac arrest. And be very careful with that. And we have quite a bunch of them here. So if we had one child who had a JLN syndrome, every time we stimulate to do a mapping, you give electrical stimulation, the child will faint. Right. So what do? You work with the physician, you explain to them, understand what it is. So we have to develop a different procedure to stimulate the child. So then they have to give some beta blockers for these children. And you need to, as an audiologist, you need to understand what these beta blockers are. What is it blocking? What is it suppressing when the beta blockers are happening? And how you have to give a stimulation when the beta blocker is given. So you can't give a current stimulation with an increase of 5 current units. So we went by very micro units to make the child, not to be scared of it. So it's quite an interesting journey, and that you have when you have a very good team and you're willing, open-minded to learn from them. Never think you are the best. You are the best because you only have the good team. And we always have this concept: no individual is bigger than the team. That applies to any team or any association for that matter.
That's amazing. Thank you for widening our, it's amazing how you put audiology in a wider sociological perspective. And I liked how you went from audiology and you said, yes, hearing is my go-to, but communication down the line, socialization down the line. And thank you for your words of wisdom and all your inputs that you're sharing with us. I also have, so I know you're engaged in so many different projects. What's your vision for audiology in India?
Well, one of my projects which I'm currently doing is to create a society which is free of deafness. So what we have done, we have adopted villages. And with my team, we go to the village and we screen the entire village completely. And then whoever has got a hearing problem, we give solutions for them. Whether it's a cochlear implant or a brainstem implant or a hearing aid or any middle ear surgeries or tympanotomies, whatever it is, we do it. And we make sure that nobody in the village remain deaf or they have hard of hearing. So the goal is to create, the point is I have to create a system. I have to create a system or a mechanism or a procedure or what do you call it as a structure, a social structure, hearing healthcare structure in the society where we live in India, where it is much more easy and accessible for the people to get a treatment when they have a problem with hearing. Now, everybody has a passion. So I wanted to go and help people, but nobody knows how to go and help people. And everybody, and philanthropists, they said, I have money, I want to give money to help a lot of children with hearing, but they don't know how to do it. So the most important is creating a system. So the project is to create a deafness-free society. So we have adopted 2-3 villages now. And I mean, right now we are at a phase, we are working for the last 1.5 years. We are at a phase where in another 3 months or so, there will be one village near Chennai, or rather I would say one village in India where nobody in that village remains deaf. So we are very close to achieve that goal. So I wanted to do that. And I know there will be a lot of errors and we'll have to revise our strategies, protocol. Finally, I want to come up with a working model. Okay, look, if you want to make this village free of deafness, there is a model to it. A model which makes the audiologist to have an easy access to the patients to have an easy access to the healthcare team, which includes audiologist, otologist, other therapists and whoever it is. And, fitting the devices, hearing aids, etc., etc. So that's the kind of model that we are doing now. So the ultimate goal is create a society which is free of deafness. Only then I can achieve, if I have to make sure that whoever is born deaf will never remain deaf, I think I have to think beyond my clinical or technical or scientific work. I have to make sure that there's a system in place where I can roll out my scientific work to reach even the common man. That's the work what we are engaged now.
That's amazing and such noble work. On a technical end, what is your vision for audiology in general, globally? Where do you see audiology in the next 10 years?
Very simple. If you look at the WRH, World Report on Hearing, in another 20, 30 years down the line, okay, every 5th person or the 8th person on the road is going to have some hearing loss, which means there is no dearth for patients, there is for audiologists. But the service model will have to change. The model has to be in such a way that the hearing health care is available, accessible, affordable, attainable, and sustainable, right? So if the audiologists have to keep these things in mind, every clinical service that they do, they have to make sure they achieve these 5 things in their service. If they have a model to achieve these 5 things in their service, they're going to be successful. Remember, technology is not going to wait for audiologists. Technology is changing. The way we do hearing testing has changed. So we can even do hearing testing online today. With a simple app, you can test a hearing. The hearing aids are going to change over a period of time. You're not going to wear this BT hearing aids, separate hearing aids. So everything is going to come onto your phone and you can use it. So the whole technology is going to change the processes and the treatment procedures. If the audiologists are not geared up to match and go and change in time with the technology, they're going to become dinosaurs. They're going to become extinct. So anybody who's willing to change gears, provide service to achieve these 5 things will survive. Anybody who's not working to achieve these 5 things will never be able to survive, because nobody is going to wait for somebody. So the technology will change. For simple example is how this iPhones or this smartphones have demolished the record companies or the audio tape companies and all those things. They don't exist nowadays, right? So things will change. You look at the cochlear implant. The cochlear implant initially was for bilateral profound hearing loss patients. Today we do cochlear implants for single-sided deafness. We do cochlear implants for asymmetric hearing loss. We do cochlear implant for ski sloping hearing losses with electroacoustic stimulations, bimodal stimulations, bilateral bimodal, unilateral bimodal. I think everything. And we have middle ear implants, we have bone conduction implants, we have brainstem implants. So I think we need to, and the future is going to be optogenetics. The optogenetics is catching up in a very big way, where we stimulate hearing using light, not using electrical stimulation or sound. So I think we really have to gear up to match and change with time. The technology will definitely change our service model for sure.
Thank you. On a lighter note, I know you're so much into biking. So talk to us about, what do you do? Like, how do you balance work life, or what do you do for hobbies? Give us a little snippet on that end.
I think this is not a lighter note. This is the most difficult question. It's very difficult for me to answer that, simply because I never had any specific time for myself as a hobby, or a time for a holiday or anything, because working with Dr. Mohan, and I was completely into work and I enjoyed doing it, and I was 24/7 working on that. But recently I've started realizing that I really have to take care of my health, and that's very important. That I also wanted to tell many audiologists and the other professionals over here, please take care of your health. And one important thing that I meticulously, disciplinedly do it is my workouts. So I do workout, I alternate my workouts, I go for gymming, I go for biking, I go for running. So this gives me 2 important things. One, I own my own time at that time, so nobody disturbs me. That's my own time. Another thing is that gives me a very good feeling to start my day or to end my day. And another interesting thing is, when you do workout, when you do biking, when you do running, you have time to socialize with other people, not necessarily your patients or your clinicians. You meet other people, you socialize, you understand what is happening around the world. And it gives me a lot of opportunity to tell the kind of work that what we do, to create an awareness about audiology, to create awareness about the solutions we have for hearing loss. I mean, that's it. So I don't have anything much to contribute in this thing. My hobby is basically I read some books, a lot of books, apart from audiology books. I love reading this Tamil literatures, because my mother tongue is Tamil, which is one of the oldest language. I love reading those literatures, and I try to connect the values of the Tamil literatures to the modern science. And today, if I look back, a lot of modern science, what we have has been documented 1,000 and 2,000 years ago in the books what we have today in Tamil. So that's something very, very interesting for me. It interests me a lot. So that's one of my favorite pastime when I fly on a long flights, and this is something which I like to do.
Thank you. If there's, on a final note, thanks again so much for your time and for sharing like so many stories, and we have so much to learn from you. Um, is there something that you would like to say that we haven't asked? And if there's anything that, no, I haven't covered or I haven't asked, but you think, oh, no, I would like to share this with the audience, what would that be?
Well, one thing I wanted to tell, when we started the cochlear implant program, it was a self-funded program where the patient has to pay from their pocket. And for the first 2 implants, Dr. Mohan and Mrs. Kameshwaran and pledged some of their property, got a loan from the bank, and gave a free implant for these children to prove that the implant works. Right now, today, with all the efforts and of our team, Dr. Mohan and everybody, with our connections with the ministers at a very higher level, like chief ministers, secretarial levels, any child who's born in the state of Tamil Nadu gets a free cochlear implant and also a free brainstem implant. So I think this is the only state, or rather the only government, which is giving a free brainstem implant. And we are close to around, we are closer to 80 children now who has received brainstem implants. And this is one of the biggest pediatric brainstem implant in the world. And I would like to thank the government, thank everybody who has worked towards it, specifically the team of MRF, which has worked towards it to get things done. So the point is simple. Money is available. There's no dearth for money. There are only dearth for ideas. So when you go with good ideas and results, money comes to you. No doubt about it. The reason why I want to make this statement is like, I know there are a lot of states, a lot of countries who has not, there's no state-funded implant programs or any healthcare system. I think we have to go and speak for them. When you go with it, you will get it, but you have to go. Parallelly, you have to work selflessly. That is very important, because when we started the implant program, we alone did not do an implant program. So when we started when we requested the government to fund implants, we also said, let MRF not, MRF alone should not be the only center for cochlear implants. We should also develop other centers as well. So we volunteered and we developed 17 cochlear implant centers, government hospitals, to do cochlear implant. So in Tamil Nadu today, there are close to 25 cochlear implant centers, and 17 to 20 of them, we are mentoring them to do it. Simultaneously, the biggest challenge in the cochlear implant program was post-operative rehabilitation, which takes almost a year to 2 years. And I always had this vision in my life that I have to set up a national network of rehabilitation centers. So when I discussed this idea with Dr. Mohan, he was interested and he immediately approved it. And we set up our first satellite centers in Coimbatore, Madurai, and all those places. Now, all these government hospitals where cochlear implant is being done, they can go to the satellite centers, get the training done. So this is something, which I really cherish. That's something we have done. And today, a lot of children are receiving cochlear implant for the efforts that we have put as a team. And all credits goes to the team. And the head of the team is Dr. Mohan, and his vision that. And I wish every state in my country, I wish every nook and corner of the world, there is a program to restore hearing for children and persons with hearing handicap. And that's the ultimate wish and the message that I wanted to tell.
And on this occasion where I have this opportunity to interview you, I want to say two big thank yous on record. One is, I still recall when I was an undergrad student back in Ramachandra, you were a master's student working at MRF and pursuing your master's. And when I was interested in AUD program, I think you and Pinky were one of the first people to even introduce me to the term, like there's something called as the AUD program. And then I went on to kind of read more about it. And that's how I got into cortical potentials. And also thanks to Rupa ma'am, because she was the one who also got me geared into CUNY and cortical potentials. So a big thank you, because you served as one of those people who, and I've been doing cortical potentials for the last 12 years now, and only cortical auditory work potentials, or anything along those lines. So thank you for being a big part of my life, both in my career and also outside of it. Thank you for being a fantastic well-wisher. And on a side note, thank you for being like one phone call away or one text message away. I still remember how recently someone with ABI, when they contacted me and someone from Texas, and then they said, okay, we are receiving all of this, and it's a Tamil family from who's living here in Texas. And then they reached out to me and they said, our son has ABI, it's pretty rare. What do we do for rehabilitation? And I said, ABI is not my forte, but I do know of someone, an expert in the field. All that I had to do was text you. And then you put me in contact and you put the family in contact with the entire team. And you have no idea what it means to the family and what it means to us. So it's not just services within India, but globally. And what is amazing is like a text message away or a phone call away. So thank you so much for all that you are to us and to the community. We so appreciate it.
Thank you, Riti. See, this is our job. This is your karma. My job is to help people with respect to my faculty of science. I have to do it. My job is to teach. I have to teach whoever is sitting right opposite to me, irrespective of whichever background they're from. So that we'll have to, we have to do it. There's no doubt about it. And you don't have to thank me for that. And thank you for putting that family onto me, that I could do something for them. And one more thing, what I wanted to tell you, Riti, is the AUD, when you spoke about AUD, another different thing what I wanted to bring in was this AUD program into India, because I personally felt there's nothing, the existing curriculum, the audiology program, what we have is extremely good, but I wanted to bring a clinical doctorate program for the clinicians. If you look at the doctoral program, we only have PhDs, where only the people who's working in the academic universities, they pursue it. But we want to build a clinical doctorate, which is not equal to PhD, something like that, like AUD. So I was so passionate about it to make sure that we have to bring some kind of program into the country. And I discussed it with the Rehabilitation Council of India and impressed them with the idea. And then I brought the RCI member secretary from India to US, and he had a meeting with a team of AUD guys, program managers in US. He is convinced, and we got a team from there. And today, we organized a meeting in India with the RCI people and the expert committee of audiology team, and also the team from the US. And today we have a AUD program officially, ready to take off in the RCI. So, which will come soon. When it comes soon, I'll be very happy to do that. I think this will definitely change the way we look into the profession. But there may be different ideas about it. Some people may say, why we need AUD? We already have a good program. That's a different of opinion. Yes, we can discuss about it, and that's a different thing. But at least, the RCA is open enough. The members in India are open enough to look at programs like that. So ultimately, we have to build a uniform curriculum all over the world in audiology. That's very, very important. We don't have a uniformity in the curriculum. We don't have a degree which is globally recognized, globally equal. And that also has to come in the academia front. So not just looking at the clinical work, and even in academics, we have to build a program which is in par all over the world. and we all have to work all over. Every association which of the respective country has to work towards it, has to come together and create a common curriculum where it is the profession is respected all over the world equally. That's important. And all the students who are studying in my institute, and I should also thank them for that, because every student who joins, or we do an interview with them for 30 minutes and explain about the course and everything, are handpicked. And all my students work without looking at the watch. Even at 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, midnight, they work. And if I call them, there is a patient, can you come and help us? At 10, they would run and come and help. So this is something very interesting that also motivates as a teacher that to work more. When you have a good student, you have to try to prove you're better than them, right? So the work culture is very important. So thanks to a lot of people, like right from Dr. Mohan to my entire team, my colleagues working with me, my students working with me, everybody together has made what we are today, just not one person.
Thanks again for your time. It's such a pleasure and an honor to interview you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Riti.
All the
Thank you so
best with
much.
everything. All the best with all your projects.